My name is Kirk Smith. I'm the Safety Services Specialist for Montana State Fund, and I'd like to welcome you to the June 2015 workshop entitled 365 Days of Safety. We're going to talk about workplace violence prevention. Of course, the other one being training tips and tools. There's a couple things we want to talk about today in the fact that we do want to talk about, first of all, what the definitions, which you guys did really good with, but we also want to talk about how safety is involved with this, and then talk about the different forms before and understanding some of those, the aggression cycle and getting through that, and then getting into, so what can we do to kind of prevent some of this stuff and address this? So as we go through this today, you'll kind of see how we're approaching them. So one of the things I did was I went out there, and of course as a safety guy, right? If you're going to ask me for a definition, where am I going first? Well, I'm going to go to OSHA. Because I thought, you know, OSHA should have the best definition out there. Obviously, this is what they're enforcing. I thought, yeah, OSHA would cover this, right? Sadly mistaken, I guess. Anyway, they were pretty good. Any act or threat, physical violence, harassment, intimidation, or other threatening, disruptive behavior that occurs at the work site. But there's things that happen that isn't necessarily at the work site. It can be work-related, but I think in the society that we live in now, Facebook and all the social media stuff that we have, things are bleeding over. And so I don't think that we can say that it occurs just at the work site. So this didn't work for me. So I thought, okay, so if I'm not going to go with this definition, where else will I go? Well, I decided, okay, well then I'm going to go to the Society for Human Resource Management. I thought they obviously should have a good definition. So I went through and they did. They had a pretty good one, a spectrum of behaviors, including overt acts of violence, threats, and other conduct that generate a reasonable concern for safety, from violence where a nexus exists between behavior and physical safety. And I struggle with the physical safety part of this because I think one of the things we need to understand is that can it be more than just physical violence? Yeah, it doesn't have to be I feel like you're going to beat me up in the parking lot type thing, right? It can actually feel where all of a sudden you're inside my head and it's having an effect on me. So it can be more psychological or emotional because that's what we are. As human beings, we're emotional beings. It has an effect on you physical, but first of all, it's through the emotional or through that psychological point. Okay, so I kind of thought, well, they hit most of it, but and then on-site or off-site, but it's still related to work. So not all of these were bad. I just didn't find one that I felt, you know, at this point anyway, that I thought was the best. So then I thought, okay, so if these guys didn't get it, obviously if I go to the FBI, right? I got to go somewhere that's going to give me a good definition on what I want. And I thought, okay, they might do it. Again, action words that endanger or harm another employee or result in another employee having a reasonable belief that they are in danger. I struggled with that still a little bit because that's not exactly the direction I wanted to go. However, they did have a good comment, which was any other behavior that causes others to feel unsafe. Okay, well, I'm still thinking physical here, though, is the problem that I kind of got from this. So what I went with, the National Institute for Prevention of Workplace Violence, their definition, acts of aggression or violence that occur in or are related to the workplace, whether intentional or reckless. I think there's also a thing here where I don't think sometimes that people intend to have the reaction or intend to cause problems. Just might be an offhand comment, might be something that they said that was taken the wrong way, because we know that we have miscommunication that happens. So I kind of thought, well, okay, reckless works for that. Includes assaults, threats, disruptive, aggressive, hostile, verbal, or emotional abuse. Okay, that covered everything that I wanted to cover. Behaviors that generate fear for one's safety or entail perceived risk. That perception is what kicked in there. And so I kind of like this one the best out of all of them. And it also included damage to the organization's resources or capabilities. Your employees are a resource of your organization. And so I think it's important to understand that you have to protect your resources, and your employees being part of that, certainly that you want to protect them. All right. Now, how does OSHA get involved? Well, OSHA doesn't have a standard on this. So if you went out to OSHA and you said, okay, so what's the standard that covers workplace violence? It wouldn't be there. They rely on industry standards. So they do what they call the 5A1. And the 5A1, and it states basically each employer shall furnish to his employees a place of employment that is free from recognized hazards. But in the state of Montana, we also know that if you work for the state, county, city, or school district, you're not covered under this because you're a public employee, and OSHA only covers federal and private businesses. In the state of Montana, we have our own Occupational Safety and Health Act, and under it, we call it a general duty clause, but each employer to provide a safe workplace. And that includes that is safe for each of the employer's employees. Number 4 down there, or do any other thing reasonably necessary to protect the life, health, and safety of the employees or the employer's employees. So this is how OSHA this is how safety gets involved in this through these 2 acts, okay? So we have the federal act, we also have the state act, and that's where it can be a citation through one of those particular organizations, okay? So what are the forms of workplace violence? So raising my voice, my tone of my voice can also play into this. My posture. So if you think about it, how you place yourself, your body language. Because we know that in communication, it's more than just talking, isn't it? It's more than just our words, but it's how we set things up. It's how we interact with one another, but through that communication, the body, the stance of the body and everything else tell us more information, you know. So sometimes those 2 messages that get sent out don't come together very well. So we have to be aware of that. And then of course those words and phrases. And I think it's important to kind of understand how all of this can, and sometimes it can be misconceived, and sometimes it can be things that half of the room or even a part of the room would not see that as being a threat, but it could be considered a threat. So I also use this picture here. I thought that was a good picture to use because now if this guy is a coach and he's on the sideline and the ref just made what he considered a bad call and he says, "Ref, that was a bad call," and he's pointing the finger. What's your perception? What's your thought pattern with that? He's doing his job. If a coach doesn't throw the clipboard down from time to time and get upset and stomp and everything else like that, he's not really doing his job, right? Sometimes he has to, we want him to interact with the ref. We want him to challenge the ref's calls from time to time. That's his job. That's what he's supposed to do as the coach. Now let's take this individual and we're going to put him in our office now. And this guy comes in our office and he says, "You're really pissing me off." Now what's your perception? Huh? Now you're in trouble, right? And this kind of happens from time to time, doesn't it? So again, when we take a look at these things, this is kind of what we see as more benign, but these are things that people get reads off of, and it can set the tone for a relationship when people first meet each other. All of these things go together, and it will give us our comfort level or won't give us our comfort level.